There were definitely a few moments that really shaped my direction in life. And when I look back at some things that were pivotal, number one, as a kid, I was raised by a single mom. And aside from some of the traumas and the stuff that went with that, there were like some financial things that had an impact on me. One was we had to get reduced priced lunch tickets. And when I would go into school, I freaking hated Mondays because Monday morning we went in to pick up these lunch tickets. And in doing so, I'd have to stand in a separate line. So it was like they literally separated those who had versus those who didn't. And that affected me. It was like affected what I felt like was my worth. And then they gave you a different colored lunch ticket, of course, so that they could differentiate. And when I hated lunch for that reason. Like, oh, I had to go and hand in the other colored ticket. So that really affected me. Secondly, I remember that there were 3 grocery stores in town, and depending upon, I was always like, well, why don't we go to the same grocery store? And what I recognized later on in life was that sometimes they would have my mom's photograph at the checkout because those represented the check that bounced. So we would like go to different grocery stores based on which ones she knew she didn't have a bounce check at. And look, she provided an unbelievable life for us, and we made do with what we had. And so when I say these things, they just affected me. They made me realize that we were living a life barely, but we were different based on our financial situation. I also remember things like sitting in driver's ed. I remember there was a window and I could see the people talking. We were into the second day and they were looking at me, and I'm like, oh no. I had to turn in my check the day before, and I'm like, sure enough, can we speak with you? And I knew, oh, mom's check bounced. So I wasn't able to continue on with the driver's ed class until we had the money to afford to put me through the class. So these things started making me recognize that, okay, there is a difference with families that had money and those that didn't. So that had an impact. I also recognized I had a moment when I was a senior in high school where I was became kind of friends with the teacher, Mr. Lease, where I didn't do a lot of studying. I just understood the concepts. He'd use me as an example a lot in class because we could you'd memorize the formula. Well, I'd never do the homework, so I didn't memorize the formula, but I remembered the concept. So I'd come to the answer, but I would do it in a different way, and he'd use that as an example. Look, here's the concept. It's not the formula, but I'd come up with the right answer. And so we created this. He thought I was a unique kid, and we created this relationship. And one day I was talking to him as class was winding down, and I was like, I saw on the board it said $1 million. And there was some math stuff that went with it, and I'm like, what is this? And he said, oh, well, that's for my remedial math class. So those kids that are not going to go on to college, a lot of them might not graduate high school, they might get their GEDs, they'll go right into the workforce. So I teach them the things about math that they're going to need to know and understand. And he goes, and the reality is this is an example of how if they started putting away $200 a month, that they would be a millionaire by the time they were 40. It was something like that. And he's like, so when I look around this class and I look at all the kids that are going to go off to college, the kids that start putting away when they're 18 years old, $200 are going to be further along and retire earlier than the kids that go off to college. And I was like, whoa. So he was teaching me the lesson of the impact of compounding or compound interest. And I was like, damn, that lesson stuck with me until later in life, a little bit later in life, when I read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, which had another impact on me. But those moments of kind of my childhood and not having, they really shaped, had a pretty deep impact on my desire to go and create a different life for myself than the one that I lived growing up. Let's talk about that. Couple of life decisions that affected me along the way. I went to Pepperdine University. My mom did everything that she could to support me, provide me with experiences that would give me the ability to get into a great school, which I did. Had 100% financial aid and had a great opportunity at Pepperdine University. Well, that year I had fallen in love with this girl, and at the end of the year, she was going back home to Maui, and I didn't have enough money to make a trip back to Minnesota, where I was from, and then go and visit her on Maui. So I had to make this decision. What do I do? And I was like, sorry, Mom, I'm breaking your heart. I'm not coming home this summer. I'm going to go to Maui. I spent summer on Maui, had an unbelievable summer, and then the frickin' bomb dropped. The week before we're supposed to go back to college, she said, my girlfriend at the time said, by the way, I've decided not to go back to college. So I was at this pivotal moment where, what do I do? To walk away from college did not feel great, but at the same time, I knew, Maui's this little island in the Pacific, that I'd be walking away from a relationship that I felt like was deeply meaningful. So what did I choose? I broke my mom's heart twice, called my mom, and I said, I'm not going back to school. And so here I was, a 19-year-old kid living on the island of Maui, driving pizza for Pizza Hut. So that's where life was headed. Now I'm like, what do I do? Like, I've got no college education. Well, I'm on Maui. Like, what the heck? How am I going to make money, be able to fly back home to see my family, who I was extremely close to? So I read the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And that book gave me the confidence that I could do it. And the whole key principle was learning to have money make money for you. And so I decided that the fastest and best way that I could do that was to go and find a restaurant that paid the most in cash tips. So instead of doing what a lot of people did, they wanted to go right into being a bartender or a waiter. I'm like, look, I'll go start at the bottom. I'll go start as a busser, work my way up, no matter how long it takes me to do so that ultimately I can make the most amount of cash that then I can funnel into investments that would make money for me. So that was my drive in the very beginning. Went and worked for Lahaina Grill as a busser. In doing so, continued to educate myself. I first decided to put my money into my side hustle of flipping cars, and got scammed by Fast Eddie. So I'd earned 10 grand. I'd gotten up there, and then I lost it all. Second thing was I decided I was going to learn how to day trade, making money through day trading. That money got lost faster than getting scammed by Fast Eddie. Ultimately, I always knew that real estate was a vehicle that I wanted to really become an expert in, and that was going to facilitate ultimately my wealth building and my ability to have freedom in my life. And so I'm just like, screw it, I'm going to figure out a way. The second thing that property did for me is 5 years into it, we had put sweat equity in, we'd made the house nicer. 5 years later, it appraised for more. We went and refinanced it, lowered the interest rate, took money out so the payment didn't go out, took $134,000, and we purchased our next home on Maui. This home was $600,000. We took $134,000 out. That was our second home. That home we still own today. We purchased for $600,000. It's worth $1.4 million today. Third property I purchased was I purchased a townhouse in Minnesota that was meant to be a second home eventually, that was right near my mom. And it was the first time I ever paid cash. So I paid for the thing cash, 134 grand. And I just sold that property 3 months ago for $265,000. So I paid cash for it, but then I refinanced it like a few months later, or the next year. It appreciated quite a bit. So I was able to refinance it for the mortgage amount, get all of my 100% of my money out. And so it just sat there collecting rent and increasing in value for a decade. My fourth project was I purchased, so in 2016, I purchased a piece of raw land, had a unique zoning. It was zoned R3, which meant it could have 3 residential homes on it. I went and found a home manufacturing company called FabMac that had homes manufactured in California and then had them shipped to Maui. They cut these homes, 3 homes, into 4 pieces, shipped them out, stitched them back together, and I took that property that I bought 1 piece of raw land, put 3 homes on it, and then condominiumized it, which is similar to subdividing, where I was able to then sell the individual properties and homes as individuals versus as a group. And the proceeds from that project, I rolled into my first commercial property, which was purchased in 2018. We started the negotiation in the middle of July of 2018. A bankrupt property. We purchased out of bankruptcy from approval from the bankruptcy court for $2 million, and that was our first commercial property that we purchased. I think it was 30% down plus closing costs, and put some capital into it to start. So that property we still own. It generates $9,000 of cash flow after debt service. So it's just a little cash cow. It's currently valued based on its income at about $3.5 million. We bought it for $2 million. Next property was during COVID. We purchased the property in Wailuku. That became our House at Hostels, our first House at Hostels property. We purchased for $821,000 during COVID, and 18 months later, we had it appraised and did a refinance. It was valued at $5,200,000 in 18 months. So we forced basically over $4 million of appreciation, and this was we really started understanding the impact that increasing top line revenue, decreasing expenses, and ultimately increasing NOI, the impact that has on your ability to build wealth. So this was huge. In that refi, we took some of the cash out refi proceeds, and we purchased our second hospitality asset on the Big Island of Hawaii. We purchased that for $1.6 million, and it's currently valued at about $2.5 million today. Fourth property we purchased was the property right next door or adjacent to our House at Hostels. We wanted to secure gain a competitive advantage by securing long-term housing for our employees, which is incredibly difficult on the island of Maui. And instead of leasing that property, which we had been doing, we now took control and own that property instead of leasing it. So that was and we purchased it for $1,675,000. And during the appraisal process, it appraised for $2.2 million. So before we had even closed, we generated $500,000 in equity on that one because we purchased it right. Okay, so in closing, I guess what I've learned through commercial real estate is, look, I'm so blessed that I read Rich Dad Poor Dad and I started putting my money to work as I went. But in owning long-term rentals, I built equity, but it took a long time. I had a lot of time behind me for it to do what it did. We were able to accomplish in 18 months what took me 18 years in residential real estate. So it's like the ability to compress time is a key component. Now having that expertise, understanding what it really takes to purchase value add commercial properties, there's just a massive advantage, and the ability to, in a decade, accomplish, when I look forward over the course of the next decade, what I'm going to be able to accomplish is extremely exciting. In fact, that's why I'm liquidating my existing long-term rentals, to take the equity that's sitting there and really to create that velocity of money to create significant wealth.